I am 85 years old and remember things better than most people half my age. People ask me all the time how I do it. They assume I have some special trick or that I was born with a sharp mind. But let me tell you something. I have seen countless people lose their memory not because of bad luck but because they let it slip away. The truth is that a strong memory is not something you either have or do not have. It is something you take care of or you do not. And I have spent my whole life taking care of mine. I have watched friends and family struggle to remember names. I have seen them walk into a room and forget why they are there. Some laugh it off, saying it is just part of getting old. Others get frustrated, scared even, because they feel their mind slipping. I understand that fear. I have felt it too. There were days when I would forget where I put my keys or why I opened the fridge. But I refused to accept it as normal. I fought back. And that is why, at this age, I can still recall stories from my childhood as if they happened yesterday. People assume memory fades naturally with time, like an old photograph losing its color. That is a lie. Memory fades when you stop using it, when you stop challenging it, when you let it sit still. The brain is no different from the muscles in your body. If you do not use it, it weakens. If you do not push it, it shrinks. I have spent my life giving my brain the exercise it needs to stay strong. And it is never too late to start. One of the most important things I have done is keep learning. I do not care how old you are. The moment you stop learning is the moment your brain starts dying. I have met people who retired and thought they could finally relax. They stopped reading. They stopped solving problems. They stopped pushing their minds. And within a few years, they could barely remember what they had for breakfast. I have done the opposite. I still read every day. I still learn new things. A few years ago, I taught myself a new language just for the challenge. It was hard. I struggled. But that is the point. Your brain needs struggle to stay sharp. Another secret? I talk to people. Real conversations, not just small talk about the weather. I share stories. I listen to stories. I debate. I ask questions. I make my brain work to understand different opinions and different ways of thinking. Too many people, as they get older, isolate themselves. They stop engaging with the world. They spend their days watching television, nodding off in front of the screen. That is a death sentence for the mind. The brain needs interaction. It needs to be challenged. I also keep moving. You might think memory has nothing to do with movement, but you would be wrong. The body and mind are connected. When I was younger, I worked hard. My body was always in motion. I did not realize it at the time, but that physical activity was keeping my brain strong. Now, even though my legs are not as fast as they used to be, I still make sure to walk every day. I stretch. I keep my body moving. Blood flow to the brain matters. A weak body leads to a weak mind. And let me tell you something else. Stress destroys memory faster than anything else. I have seen people worry themselves sick. They stress over things they cannot change. They carry anger and resentment for years. That stress eats away at their minds. I have learned to let go. To forgive. To stop wasting energy on things that do not matter. A calm mind is a sharp mind. That does not mean I do not care. It means I do not let my thoughts drown me. I also make sure to sleep. Real sleep. Not just lying in bed staring at the ceiling. The brain cleans itself when you sleep. It organizes memories. It gets rid of waste. People who brag about sleeping only 4 or 5 hours a night are hurting themselves. I protect my sleep like my life depends on it. Because it does. One more thing. I eat like my brain depends on it. Because it does. I do not eat garbage. I eat real food. I drink water. I avoid things that make me sluggish and foggy. People do not realize how much their diet affects their memory. They eat processed junk and then wonder why they cannot think clearly. I have seen the difference in myself. When I eat well, my mind is sharp. When I do not, I feel it immediately. Now, you might be thinking it is too late for you. Maybe you have already started forgetting things. Maybe you feel like your memory is not what it used to be. Let me tell you something. It is never too late. The brain is more powerful than you think. It can rebuild. It can get stronger. But only if you work at it. I have spent my life taking care of my memory, but that does not mean you need a lifetime to fix yours. Start now. Start today. Read something new. Have a deep conversation. Move your body. Get some real sleep. Eat real food. Let go of stress. I am not special. I do not have some magic gift. I simply refuse to let my mind waste away. And if I can do it, so can you. The choice is yours. Will you let your memory fade? Or will you fight for it? Because let me tell you, nothing is more valuable than a sharp mind. Not money. Not possessions. Not even time itself. Because without memory, what is time? It is nothing. But with a sharp mind, every moment is alive. And that, my friend, is worth fighting for. Now, let's clear some common questions. What have you observed in others who have lost their memory, and what lessons can we learn from them? I have lived long enough to see many people lose their memory, and I can tell you, it is one of the saddest things to witness. I have watched friends forget their own children's names. I have seen strong, intelligent people struggle to remember where they live. I have sat across from men and women I have known my whole life, only to see confusion in their eyes when they look at me. If you have never seen someone lose their memory, you might think it happens all at once. But it does not. It happens slowly, piece by piece, until one day, they are not the same person anymore. I have noticed patterns in those who lost their memory. I have seen what they did wrong and what they ignored. Some of them never took care of their minds. They stopped learning, stopped reading, stopped challenging themselves. They spent their days doing the same things, thinking the same thoughts, never pushing their brains to work harder. The brain is like a muscle. If you do not use it, it weakens. Some of these people retired and thought they could finally relax. They watched television for hours, repeating the same routine every single day. And then, slowly, their memories began to slip. Others were swallowed by stress. I have seen people hold on to anger for decades. I have seen them worry about things that never even happened. I have seen them live in a constant state of fear. And you know what that does? It drains the mind. It eats away at memory like a slow poison. These people thought stress was just a part of life, something to carry like a heavy bag on their back. They did not realize that bag was crushing them, making their minds weaker with every passing year. Some people lost their memory because they stopped moving. They let their bodies slow down, thinking that resting all the time was good for them. But the body and the brain are connected. When the body weakens, the brain follows. I have seen people who were once active suddenly stop walking, stop stretching, stop doing anything physical. Within a few years, their memories began to fade. It is as if their minds and their bodies shut down together. Then there were those who ignored their health. They ate whatever was easy, whatever tasted good, never thinking about what it was doing to their brains. I have seen people drink sugar-filled sodas every day, eat processed foods loaded with chemicals, and then wonder why they felt sluggish, why their minds felt foggy. What you put in your body fuels your brain. If you feed it junk, it will not work properly. It is as simple as that. One of the hardest things to see is how loneliness destroys memory. I have had friends who lost their spouses and slowly drifted into isolation. They stopped talking to people, stopped having real conversations. Their world became smaller and smaller until they barely spoke at all. The brain needs interaction. It needs new ideas, new stories, new challenges. Without them, it starts to shrink. I have seen it happen, and I have seen how quickly it takes hold. There was one man I knew, a good man, strong and kind. When he was younger, he was sharp. He could remember every detail of a story, every person he ever met. But as he got older, he stopped reading. He stopped challenging himself. He spent most of his days sitting in the same chair, watching television, letting his mind grow weaker. At first, he would forget small things. A name here, a detail there. Then, it got worse. He started repeating himself, telling the same story 3 times in one conversation. Eventually, he forgot where he was, who he was with. The last time I saw him, he looked at me and had no idea who I was. That moment broke my heart. Another friend of mine was the opposite. She stayed sharp well into her 90s. She read books every single day. She wrote letters, kept a journal, challenged herself with puzzles. She never let her mind rest. And because of that, she never lost it. She could recall things from decades ago with perfect clarity. She could tell stories from her childhood as if they had just happened. She kept learning, kept thinking, kept pushing her brain to stay alive. The lesson in all of this is simple. Memory is something you have to take care of. It does not disappear overnight. It fades when you stop using it. It weakens when you stop feeding it what it needs. I have seen too many people let their minds slip away because they did not realize they had control over it. But I have also seen those who fought for their memory, who stayed strong even in old age. And the difference between them was clear. If you do not want to lose your memory, you have to act now. Read every day. Learn something new. Challenge yourself. Have deep conversations. Move your body. Take care of your health. Let go of stress. Stay connected to people. Because I can tell you from experience, once your memory starts to go, it is very hard to get it back. Do not wait until it is too late. Fight for it now, while you still can. Because a sharp mind is one of the greatest gifts you can have, and once it is gone, you will wish you had done more to keep it. If someone feels like their memory is already fading, what is the first thing they should do to start improving it? The moment you feel your memory slipping, the very first thing you must do is refuse to accept it as normal. That is the mistake too many people make. They think forgetting things is just a part of getting older, as if the mind naturally fades like an old photograph. But that is not the truth. Memory weakens when you stop using it, when you stop feeding it what it needs. If you feel like your memory is not as strong as it once was, do not sit back and let it disappear. Fight for it. It is not too late. I have seen people turn their minds around, even when they thought they were beyond saving. But you have to start now. The first thing I would tell you to do is pay attention to how you treat your brain. Do you challenge it, or do you let it sit still? The brain is like a muscle. If you do not use it, it gets weaker. If you have spent years doing the same routine, thinking the same thoughts, living on autopilot, then of course your memory is going to suffer. You need to wake it up. Read something new every single day. Not just the news, not just a few sentences on a screen, but something that forces you to think. A book. A complex article. Something that makes you work to understand it. If reading has not been a habit for you, then start small, but start. And do not just read. Talk about what you read. Tell someone about it. Teaching something to another person is one of the best ways to lock it into your memory. The second thing you must do is challenge your brain in new ways. If you keep doing what you have always done, your mind will stay in the same weak state. Learn something new. A language. A musical instrument. A new game. It does not matter what it is, as long as it forces your brain to work in ways it has not worked before. I have seen people in their 70s and 80s pick up a new skill and within months, their memory improved. Struggle is good for the brain. It forces it to grow. Now, let's talk about your body. You might think memory is just about the mind, but I am telling you, your body plays a huge role in how well your brain functions. I have seen too many people slow down physically, and shortly after, their minds slow down too. Movement increases blood flow to the brain. It wakes up the mind. You do not need to run a marathon. But you do need to move. Walk every day. Stretch. Do exercises that challenge your balance and coordination. Dance if you can. Anything that forces your brain and body to work together will strengthen your memory more than you realize. What you put into your body also matters. People do not like to hear this, but your diet has a direct effect on your memory. I have seen people eat processed food, drink sugary sodas, and then wonder why their mind feels foggy. The brain needs real food. Good fats, like those found in nuts and fish. Vegetables that provide vitamins and nutrients. Water. Plenty of water. If you constantly fuel your body with junk, your memory will suffer. I have changed my diet many times over the years, and I can tell you from experience, the difference is real. Then there is the matter of stress. If your mind is cluttered with worry, if you carry anger and resentment, your memory will struggle. I have known people who let stress eat away at them for decades. They could not sleep. They could not focus. And eventually, their minds started to fade. You have to learn to let go. Holding on to stress is like carrying a heavy bag everywhere you go. It wears you down. Find ways to release it. Meditation. Deep breathing. Writing down your thoughts. Whatever works for you, do it. A calm mind is a clear mind. Sleep is another thing people take for granted. If you are not sleeping well, your memory will decline. The brain cleans itself when you sleep. It organizes your memories, sorts through your thoughts, and prepares you for the next day. If you are only sleeping a few hours, or if your sleep is constantly interrupted, your brain does not get the chance to do its job. Make sleep a priority. Turn off distractions. Make your bedroom a place for rest, not for staring at a screen. Protect your sleep like your memory depends on it. Because it does. Another thing people overlook is social interaction. I have seen people isolate themselves, and within a few years, their minds become dull. The brain needs conversation. It needs debate, storytelling, laughter. When you talk to people, really talk, your brain has to work. It has to listen, remember details, respond. That keeps it sharp. If you feel like your memory is fading, do not pull away from people. Do the opposite. Connect. Join a group. Call an old friend. Surround yourself with people who challenge your mind. Lastly, do not be afraid to push back against forgetfulness. Too many people get lazy with their memory. They rely on notes, reminders, and technology to remember everything for them. Stop doing that. Force yourself to remember things. If you meet someone new, repeat their name to yourself. If you put something down, take a moment to picture where you left it. Actively work on recalling things instead of immediately giving up. The more you use your memory, the stronger it will get. If you feel like your memory is already fading, you have two choices. You can sit back and watch it slip away, or you can fight for it. I have seen people do both, and I can tell you, the ones who fight have a much better life. They stay engaged. They stay sharp. They stay connected to the world. It is not about luck. It is about action. Start now. Challenge your brain. Move your body. Feed it well. Get rid of stress. Sleep deeply. Stay connected. Do these things, and you will not just slow down memory loss. You will reverse it. I have seen it happen. I know it is possible. The only question is, will you do it? Looking back on your life, what would you tell your younger self about preserving memory for the future? If I could sit down with my younger self and tell him what I know now, I would have a lot to say. I would look him in the eyes and tell him that memory is not something you can take for granted. It is not an endless well that stays full no matter what you do. It is something you have to protect, something you have to nurture. I would tell him that the choices he makes every single day will determine whether his mind stays sharp or whether it fades away too soon. I would make sure he understands that memory is not lost overnight. It is lost in small, almost invisible ways, until one day, you wake up and realize you cannot remember the things that once made you who you are. I would tell him to read more. Not just skim, not just glance at words and move on, but really read. Absorb knowledge. Let the mind wrestle with new ideas. I would tell him to challenge himself with difficult books, with different perspectives, with things that force him to think. I would tell him that every time he pushes his brain to understand something new, he is strengthening it. That is how memory stays alive. It is not by keeping everything the same, by staying comfortable. It is by forcing the brain to work, to stretch, to grow. I would warn him that if he stops learning, if he stops challenging himself, his mind will start to slow down. And he will not even notice it happening until it is too late. I would tell him to talk to people. Real conversations, not just small talk. I would tell him to listen to others, to ask questions, to argue, to share stories. The brain needs human connection. It needs the back and forth of a conversation, the unexpected turns of a discussion. I would tell him that every time he engages with someone deeply, he is keeping his memory strong. I would warn him that if he ever starts to withdraw, to avoid people, to stay quiet, his mind will begin to shrink. I have seen it happen. I know how dangerous isolation is. I would tell him to move his body. Not for the sake of appearance, not just to be fit, but because movement feeds the brain. I would explain that exercise increases blood flow, that it keeps the mind alert. I would tell him that if he stops moving, if he lets himself become still, his memory will suffer. I would make sure he understands that the body and mind are connected, that weakness in one leads to weakness in the other. I would tell him to walk, to stretch, to challenge his balance, to use his hands, to keep his body as alive as his mind. I would tell him to protect his sleep. Not just to get rest, but to understand that the brain repairs itself during sleep. I would tell him that every night, the mind organizes memories, clears out waste, strengthens connections. If he does not sleep well, his memory will suffer. If he treats sleep as unimportant, if he stays up late doing nothing of value, he will pay for it later. I would tell him to respect his sleep, to create a routine, to let his brain do its work. I would tell him to manage his stress. I would tell him that the mind can only hold so much before it starts to break under the weight. I would tell him to let go of what he cannot control, to release anger instead of holding onto it for years. I would tell him that stress eats away at memory, that worry drains the mind like a slow poison. I would tell him to find ways to quiet his thoughts, to breathe, to step back. I would tell him that peace is not just good for the soul, it is necessary for a strong mind. I would tell him to eat well. Not just to stay in shape, but because food fuels the brain. I would tell him to avoid processed junk, to be careful with sugar, to feed himself with real, nourishing food. I would explain that certain foods sharpen memory, that a good diet is just as important as mental exercise. I would tell him to drink water, to stay hydrated, to keep his body working the way it should. I would tell him to remember that memory is not just about facts and details. It is about the moments that make life meaningful. I would tell him to pay attention, to be fully present, to take in the world around him. I would tell him to remember the way the air smells after it rains, the way laughter feels in his chest, the sound of the voices of the people he loves. I would tell him that memory is not just about the past, it is about holding on to the things that make life rich. I would tell him that he has a choice. That every day, he can either strengthen his mind or let it slip. I would tell him that nothing is more valuable than a sharp mind, that once memory fades, you cannot buy it back. I would tell him to take care of it, to guard it, to fight for it. Because the day will come when he is older, when he will look back and either be grateful for the choices he made or regret the things he ignored. If I could sit down with my younger self, I would not waste time with small talk. I would look him in the eye and tell him the truth. I would tell him that memory is a gift, but only if you take care of it. I would tell him to live in a way that strengthens his mind every single day. And if he listens, if he truly understands, then I know he will grow old with a sharp memory, with a mind full of stories, and with a life that he can fully remember. And that, I would tell him, is one of the greatest treasures a person can have. If you liked today's discussion, don't forget to like the video, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to stay updated with every video we release. And yes, don't forget to share your experiences and thoughts in the comments. Every comment is special to us. Your feedback helps us improve further. We'll continue to meet you in every new video on this channel, so until next time, take care.